Good evening, everyone. This is Sibbe Bladh. I want to talk a little bit about my heritage. Heritage defines a person. To be a carrier of a cultural native heritage is the greatest pride for a person. That means that you are in connection with your roots. You come from a lineage that goes back to the ancient times of native tribes. And your lineage of your forefathers and your mothers is a holy chain that goes back from the beginning of time. To be a native person is to identify as something else than the secular, assimilated, mainstream society and the citizens that are produced from those modern societies. It means that you belong to the old world order when man was wild and free and aboriginal. And I'm from Scandinavia, meaning that my heritage is the Swedish Old Norse tradition. And my people are about 20 millions in the homelands, in the Northlands. Then we have Nordic people that emigrated and have a Norse heritage that lives in America, Australia and Europe. England, France, Russia have a lot of Norse heritage. But Scandinavia is the main land. Denmark and Sweden and Norway and Iceland, that's East and West Scandinavia. And mainly around Kattegat, Skagerrak and the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. That is the original mainland. All Germanic tribes come from this region of southern Sweden and Denmark. As a matter of fact, the name of Old Norse used to be Danish. And it was a maritime culture, water culture. They were boatsmen, sailors that established new civilizations. And this go way back to the Bronze Age, to the Mediterranean, and the Scandinavians are the closest related to the early European natives. Scandinavia is the closest DNA profile in this time. And the Scandinavians, the people who became the Scandinavians, they were survivors from the Ice Age. A small group that was living a bit south of the Baltic Sea. A remnant. In our saga, it's said that they lived in caves during the Ice Age. And this people was isolated from Southern Europe and became its own enclave its own ethnic group. And the Scandinavian culture is a mix between native European and Uralic, Siberian, Finnish culture with a shamanic. So it's a very special, distinct culture that is both connected with the Indo-European and the really early people that used to live in the Middle East, the Aesir from Asgard, and later on the fur, the bear hunters and the trappers of the north was in connection with the Finnish shamanic culture, which had ties to the Uralic. So a completely unique culture appeared, even though they were all connected to the folk. It was one folk in the later ages in North Europe, from Holland, Germany, Scandinavia, was one people with many tribes. And later on, when this indigenous culture was crushed by the Vatican, Sweden was the last of the Germanic tribes that was assimilated and conquered. So the Scandinavian heritage is something that is way before Christianity and the modern European civilization. Like I said, it's the old world order. In old Europe, the Vikings were top elite people that ruled most areas that they came to. And as they settled and the Norse Scandinavian genes came into the ruling classes of these countries, they became strong nations that could eventually defeat the motherland, the Vikings, showing you that this is it's a strong heritage genetically. Racist, anti-European people, they try to claim that all whites are like the same, and that there is no white natives or whatever, that we are part of the white collective guilt that they seem to think exist. And truth is, Scandinavians and Slavs, Eastern Europeans, didn't have much to do with anything of colonial or the slavery, the past. Had nothing to do with that. Only connection is that they share the same skin color. So the collective guilt is purely built on racism. It's not built on the individual people's action in reality or history. So that's why we condemn it, all of that, and demand that each nation, each tribe get treated like a separate entity and are not paired together with other people's crimes because you shared like the same hair color or whatever. It's unfair. And it's the same with many times when you show people that you deal with Scandinavian culture, they automatically think it's Nazism, that this has something to do with National Socialism in Germany for 80 years ago. Because the German occultist who was working with a political agenda, they used the Scandinavian symbols, which are magic. They was working with the Scandinavian magical system, because the Germans, they also thought that they were offspring of the Nordic ancestors. Like I told you, all Germanic tribes came from Scandinavia. So the history tell them that. And they made use of all these symbols and created a race idea. And today's contemporary Scandinavian heathenry and heritage have no race agenda. They have no expansive plans. Don't want to convert others. Don't want to take over others' land or discriminate other people. It's simply a native culture with its own traditions and lore and myth and psyche. And many of the symbols that were used for negative things is still present in our system. And some of the symbols we have to be careful with. The swastika is a Nordic symbol that is found on a vast number of rune stones. So it's a symbol that were used frequently by the Scandinavian ancestors, but because of the sensitivity surrounding this symbol, we have to take it easy with it, because people misunderstand it and directly connect that with the political right-wing views. And of course all the crimes from World War II and the disaster that happened to Europe. But still, other cultures that has like the same Indo-European roots, they used the swastika in their religions. So this is a bit double, and it's also like we're getting punished only because the fact that we are white and have a Germanic belong to the Germanic world. But it's still unfair. Like I said, each people should be judged by their own actions from their ancestors. And a couple of years back, England wanted retribution from Scandinavia because of the Viking invasions 4,000 years ago. And Denmark paid money to England for this. They paid retribution. But still, it's based on a lie, because England were Christianized very early and was an enemy of Scandinavia. So the wars on England wasn't plundering, it was a defense war, it was a war of cultures, it was a clash between civilizations that was struggling for survival. So no one should pay retribution for that. Many slaves were taken from Ireland to Sweden and became a part of the gene pool. They made the Scandinavians prettier, much prettier, because the people in the British Isles were smaller and prettier. The Norsemen were big, massive, with raw features. And the little people, they were very beautiful. So they made our people more beautiful and became a part of our people. Just as the Nordic people became a part of the British Islands people. Happened spontaneously as the wars and the power struggles and the movements caused that. And the heritage, it has never been as important as now. We used to live in a world of our own in Scandinavia. There was no immigration to these lands up till the 1970s. In the 50s there were workers coming from other European nations. But in the 70s, Sweden and Scandinavia could facilitate housing with running water and everything. And then a larger immigration started. So before that point, we were living in our own world. And since we were so isolated in our world, we didn't think about that. The system that was transforming from a native system formed by the ancient Vikings, who built the law system in Sweden and the early democracy, and it transformed into an assimilation machine that started to break down Nordic identity and nature. So we didn't realize, we thought we were a part of the administration. But then 30 years later it was obvious that that wasn't the case. They were more running a silent extermination process against our people. And it's still going on. They're killing the identity mostly. It's a psychological war. Yeah, now the authorities in Sweden, they abuse people. It has been clear from the COVID-19 pandemic that they really don't give a shit about the people here. And none of the citizens. Not only the natives, but all citizens in Sweden, they don't give a shit about them. And we had the most deaths in the whole world last week. I mean, it's incredible. This administration is dangerous. They are dangerous. And they don't represent the native Swedes. They represent only their modern assimilated system, which work like a colonizer, basically. An international mafia that is reaping havoc on our land. And this started way back with the nobility. That's when this colonial mentality that they own everything and kill everything and fuck the natives. It's an old mentality, it's nothing new. But we have let it go so far. And now our heritage are threatened from many sides. It's threatened from inside and from outside at the same time. And anything positive that is trying to be done meets opposition, meets polarization, gets stigmatized. So the situation is not good on an organizational level anyway. And the museums, they destroy artifacts from our ancestors, and this is against international law for native peoples. They should handle those objects to us, because it belongs to our ancestors and our culture. The modern state and their scientists don't have the right to do anything with our possessions. But when the natives become lame, become assimilated, they become soft in the head and they forget what's important, and they start to take things for granted. And when you let others define your identity and your history, then you're fucked. You're gone. You lose. All native peoples define themselves. Self-identification. And they own their own history, told from their view, and not from the modern society's scientists or historians. It doesn't matter, and even genetic DNA don't matter either when it comes to native. Native is to belong to the land, to the area, and to the professions that used to be the fishing and the hunting and the forest, and the patterns and the language and the songs and the dances and the way of building houses and boats and weapons and everything. Native is to belong to a culture, to an ethnic group. So it's not a question about skin color or DNA or being defined from outside. It's if we run this shit. Okay, this is ours, and we are pure bloods, full bloods. So it's our say that counts. And to be native should be to be a defender of the biological system, of the spiritual system, to be a defender of the nature and to the good things, and to be a defender of dignity. And all native peoples are ambassadors for the old world order. And it doesn't matter how much this new world order build their modern world. At one point or another, everyone have to think about their heritage and to respect that. They have to meditate on that, because the DNA vibration is a mighty, coming from the ancient ages, molded and shaped into perfection. So to be native is to enjoy oneself and to be sure of oneself, self-confident, because you're rooted. And when you can be honest to yourself, you can also open your heart and to accept and to love yourself to the fullness. Because to be native, to be a full blood, is not to live in a history or a dream. It's a reality. And you just live that reality. You are that. And then we also have the myths and traditions, but the first connection is through the blood, through the ancestry, and through the connection with the land. And that makes you feel good. That makes you feel strong. And that makes you feel love. And this strength and love is big enough to share to all people. Yes. Message from tonight's fireside. Take care, everyone. Bless.